what better way to remember Sitaram, as previous speakers have pointed out, than to talk of JNU. JNU's unique student movement, JNU's student union, and the very idea of JNU. I first got to know Sitaram from a distance as I watched him speak and I watched him conduct GBMs. I joined JNU in 1976, and Sitaram then and SFI was at the forefront of this fiery struggle against the emergency, and Prakash Karath has already spoken about how Sitaram led this 500-strong group of people to Indira Gandhi's house, and how she was forced to resign. I then got to know Sitaram after I became a member of the SFI. Namita Sinha made me a member in 1979, and when I became active in SFI and fought the elections twice as counselor of the School of Languages, I got to know him on a personal level. As Jagdishwar has pointed out, Sitaram and the older generation of SFI comrades who had led JNU in the initial years when it was founded, they were the star speakers, and they would come on the last day just before the elections, and they would be responsible because, and particularly Sitaram, for swinging the boats at the end, the tally, etc. Then Ranjana Saxena, Ritu Jairath and I, in 1985, we were in Moscow on a UGC scholarship for our field trip, and we met Sitaram there. This was a very exciting time in Moscow. Gorbachev had just taken over, Perestroika, Glasnost was beginning, and Sitaram was there, and we had a very wonderful evening that we spent with him, talking to him about all the changes. After we came back, I used to meet Sitaram at various events for many, many years, and Sitaram had this quality of always meeting you very warmly with a smile in a very friendly way. He just never ever lost that JNU bonhomie. Even though by then he had become a central committee member, he was a national level political activist, he was in the Politburo, but Sitaram always met you like it was JNU. Wherever you were in JNU. JNU was set up, as has already been mentioned, because Nehru believed that a university should foster humanism, the search for truth, the search for reason. And JNU actually did, which was named after Nehru, did all this and much more. And this was due not just to the stellar faculty that G. Parthasarathy and Professor Muniz Raza, as well as Professor Murthy, had got together, and the kind of innovative courses that JNU had, but it was also because of this unique student movement on the campus and the democratic traditions that this movement had set up. The academic admission policy has already been referred to. JNU was meant to foster inclusiveness, it was meant to foster, it was meant to foster pluralism, and thank you. And the academic and the admission policy with its socio-economic weightage for deprivation ensured that JNU had one of the most diverse student populations any university could ever think of. JNU was also supposed to foster criticality, interdisciplinarity, and as Raghunandan just mentioned, that happened all the time, not just within classrooms, but outside the classroom, in these intense debates in the dining halls of hostels, on the lawns of Jhelum and other places, and in the dhabas. And these discussions were all about critical theory, about center to left politics, the most diverse range of topics that you could pick up information and knowledge on because of the kind of student movement there was in JNU. I myself, when I joined, I was in my mid-teens. I had come fresh out of school. I was very young, and School of Languages had a 5-year integrated course at that time. I was very apolitical, I was a bookworm, and really not at all interested in politics. But then there you are, JNU will not leave you alone. It will touch you and it will transform you. One of the things that I learned within the classroom was about the Soviet Union, how the Soviet Union, apart from the great literature, apart from the fact that Soviet Union had been one, Moscow and Leningrad had been some of the great cities where art had flourished, not just Paris or Berlin or London. This is very little known that the Moscow, Leningrad were also cities of the avant-garde. I also got to know that Soviet Union, within a span of less than 20 years after the revolution, could take on the might of Hitler's fascism and defeat it. The kind of development that had happened there, the literacy that they had managed to spread, and Soviet Union was very interesting for me because on the one hand there was the censorship and there was the canon of socialist realism, but on the other hand, because they were free from the market pressures, they were free from commercial pressures, a whole range of artists came up who brought in great art. I mean, I can just refer to the philosophical cinema of Andrei Tarkovsky, for instance, which couldn't have been possible in any other Western country. So Soviet Union turned me, but then so did all these other debates. So this interdisciplinarity and criticality that JNU was to foster, it happened within the classroom and without, in all the various spaces of down campus and up campus. At that time, JNU was split into these two spaces. Apart from this, women were comparatively safe and secure. There were fantastic women activists from the senior generation before us. There was Indu Agnihotri, Indrani Mazumdar, Ashoklata Jain, who passed away, among many others. And later on in my contemporaries, there was Sonia, there was Namita, there was Tinku. So any number of women activists who came forward. There was no ragging on the campus. The seniors, in fact, took juniors in their fold, guided them, mentored them, and gave them all manner of help. So this was a very, very unique campus, and the democratic tradition that is being spoken about was really forged from day one, in which people like Prakash Karat, Sitaram Yechuri, and many others from different political persuasions and parties actually came forward and built this tradition. And of course the elections. It has already been referred to, the constitution, the fact that there was a student election commission, that from the announcement of the elections to the voting to the declaration of results, everything was carried out. But I would also like to mention the nightlife on the day the counting happened, because a lot of vilification has occurred in recent years about JNU's so-called nightlife by right-wing trolls and politicians who really have very, very limited imaginations. On those chilly October nights, people would sit together, cheer every time tallies were announced by the election commission. There would be songs, revolutionary songs being sung, Parcham, Pratidwandi, and of course the lone voice of Shanne Naqvi would suddenly rise from somewhere in the dark. And this kind of magic is something that only those who have lived through will know and will never forget. It will remain in our memories till we are gone from here. So this whole democratic tradition, which was set up by a whole range of political activists, which included Sitaram in the main. Reference has already been made to the to the emergency years when people were picked up, students were picked up, people had to go underground, and so on. So the revolutionary politics of JNU was very, very important. It touched each and every one of us. I stood for councillor elections twice from the School of Languages in 82, 83 when I was a councillor and the union was being led by Nalini Ranjan Mohanty. I participated in all the actions. There was an agitation, but one day, because I'm such a film buff, I gave the slip and I pushed off to Delhi University to see a film. And when I returned, I got to know about the mass arrests. I got to know that Nalini Ranjan Mohanty, the president, had also been arrested, and so on. So Jagdishwar Chaturvedi and I, who were out, we went to Tihar with others. We went to ensure that all these 372 odd people who had been sent to prison could be brought out. And I still remember with great respect and gratitude lawyers who helped us at that time, Mr. Hardev Singh, Mr. Sodhi. There were so many people who came forward to help us. Later we were joined by T.K. Arun, C. Jairaj, Ramanna, and so many other students to get people out of the jail. So by the 90s, once we everything changes from the 70s to the 80s. That is one last chapter of the revolutionary upswing all over the world. In the 90s, the Soviet Union falls, socialism in Eastern Europe falls, and in India, the Babri Masjid is made to fall by the Hindutva Brigade. And in the West, if all these falls were theorized on the one hand as a clash of civilizations, which came forward, a theory to fill the vacuum of the ideological division of the Cold War, on the other hand, there was the talk of the end of history. In India, we saw the rise of excluding majoritarianism and forms of violence that had never been seen before, particularly against minorities. When all this was happening, universities too were attacked, and JNU took a particularly hard brunt. This was probably because of the anti-intellectual dispensation, but also because JNU was always seen as the bastion of the left. So through all this, JNU has remained resistant, it has fought back, and this is the strength of the kind of democratic revolutionary tradition that had been set up by the founders in the first decade. I was looking through some of Sitaram Yechury's writings and speeches, and I found that even later, till recently, until he passed away, he was talking about globalization and neoliberalism going hand in hand, and where socialism stands vis-a-vis these two movements, communalism, the ideologues and the theory of Hindutva, and so many other contemporary relevant topics, education, and so on. He even says that secularism, I think this is in his Zakir Hussain memorial speech sometime in 2001, that secularism is not just the separation of the state and politics from religion, but it is also that all religions, all languages, all cultural traditions are allowed to develop, they should be nurtured, and they should live without the fear of any kind of domination. My particular favorite, quote from his writings, which reflects his particular brand of humor that Jagdishwar spoke about, is a line in, I think this is a speech he gave somewhere in Sri Lanka on socialism and globalization, and he says that for all those who say there is TINA, TINA is the acronym for there is no alternative. So he says for all those who say there is no TINA, there is TINA vis-a-vis globalization, I would like to say there is SITA, and all caps, and SITA standing in brackets, socialism is the alternative. I would like to end by saying that the loss of Sitaram Yechury at this particular political conjuncture is very harmful. I mean, it is a great loss for all kinds of progressive democratic politics. I would like to convey my condolences to his family, his friends, his comrades in the left movement, and indeed to all of us, because with his passing, I think all of us have lost a bit of that collective soul that was part of our JNU milieu. Thank you.